Hello, LinkedIn friends. We are so excited to be here live with you for another episode of Biz Therapy. Super excited to have one of my operator and friend and all-around awesome dude, Adam Judea here. He is going to tell you a little bit more about himself. But I am going to give you the topic for today. It is the ultimate growth blueprint, building scalable systems for entrepreneurs and solopreneurs and people like me that are building out an agency model. And Adam has personally helped with that. So we're going to give some amazing tips. We're going to give some amazing tricks, and we are going to talk all about it. But first, I want to introduce our awesome guest, Adam. Adam, welcome. Tell us about yourself and give us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Stacy. I'm excited to be here too. So my name's Adam. I'm currently in Minnesota, United States, for anyone that's not over here. It is very hot right now, so anyone who thinks it's cold, that's a lie. It's very humid and sucks. Anyways, a little bit about me. I've been in operations for over 15 years and started in a corporate role. It was actually my high school job. Fun fact, that's a story for another time. And walked into a startup, and then recently just kind of made the jump to launch my own business, moving toward, it's more of an agency model. It's a different hybrid kind of what's out there today, but it's something that matches a lot what I know. But yeah, I think from my LinkedIn comments, people can tell that I played with Legos as a kid. I love to build things and kind of building out what's going on behind the scenes and what I think is probably the most important part of any business to the customer, but also to the people that work in the business. That's something I'm really addicted to helping with. So it's a little bit about me. Actually, Stacy, for you, my mom was riding in the car with me and she didn't quite understand what I did for a living anymore. She was used to seeing it.
Of course.
We listened to this podcast. I think it was the one with Hector, actually. And she was listening, and then you called me right after it too. And she's like, "Oh, I get it now."
Yes, go mom. Shout out to all the moms that don't understand what we do. I love that. That's amazing. That's funny. Love that.
That's my story and why people know what I do now. So,
and must love dogs. You come on, you didn't even add that part.
No, I know. I could take the camera right now and shift it down. You'll see a wiener dog just flopped laying out on the floor. It's my little wingman.
Amazing. So I just want to talk about the power of LinkedIn because Adam and I are dear and very interested in LinkedIn and growing our networks in LinkedIn. Shout out to Lachey, who wrote, and you can kind of tell more of the story. She wrote a post about her operator and how you helped scale her business and her systems at the end of the day. And she plugged Adam at the end of the day. And I followed her, had followed what she does, and was like, I need to speak to this guy. Her post just answered the pain and the problems that I was having as I was scaling Rev Up Advisory at the end of the day. Adam and I connected. We're fast LinkedIn friends, and we kind of nerd out on the same things. And so I just want to say it's a serendipitous moment that we're back here on my LinkedIn Live, but I slid into your DMs, and that's how we met at the end of the day.
That was what was really fun about working with Lachey particularly, but it was also very scary for me because Lachey was probably the first experience where I was not working in a corporate role anymore, and that kind of took things off. I, to this day, am super thankful to have a really strong friend group and just people that, connect with me, whether it's even just saying, "Hey, what's up?" I think that goes a long way. A little bit about just how I'm used to building relationships with people is you go out of your way to actually get to know someone, and it's not this preachy thing. It's you legitimately call them at 7 p.m. and ramble. It's okay. And what worked.
Adam gets my car ride conversations a bunch of times.
And my commute when I was in California, the commute every day was probably 3 to 4 hours of driving. And so I only know how to fill my time with connection. or else like music, audiobooks, like I will fall asleep in traffic. It just won't work. So yeah, so in the very early stages, having someone to work for and with Lachey and with her business was really exciting. I get addicted to solving the problems, and we were able to do it right away, and now she's on a really good path to keep building her consultancy and hopefully more from there. So
awesome. So Adam has helped build us a low code, no code solution with Coda specifically. And so let's just take a step back before we talk about scaling systems for solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, and small agencies. And let's just throw up your corporate experience, because I think this gives people a really good sense of why you're exceptionally qualified to do this and why you actually love doing what you did. So just talk to me a little bit about your corporate role before you start your own thing.
Yeah. Chipotle was my first true love. And I always say that to people because I love the brand still to this day. I think the first thing people asked me when I stepped out was like, oh, you got to be mad, like all this stuff. Like, no, I am so thankful to like have not only like the leaders that shaped me, but it was also the systems and the processes. Like it's an operations focused business. And I mean, anyone in the US knows what Chipotle is, or at least I hope you do. And it really built like a solid foundation of you do the same things every day over and over again, and you get really, really good at it. And so what helped when I came into this world today was if we can't do the same thing every day with a process, there's a problem. And and like people will be like, well, you're too process focused, or any of that. And not that I get that feedback, but I see a lot of that content out there where it's like, but no, when you actually peel back the layers, like there are processes and those things have to be simplified. They have to be repeatable. It's not just some like hoopla that you can post up on your feed. It's like, you actually have to get in there and do it. It's going to be hard to do it. I think Stacey, you and I have had conversations like this too, where it's like, it's over-engineered. I think that's a really good comment. And that was great feedback even for me, because it's like, well, that is how difficult your process is when you really look at all the moving parts. But how do we display that not only to the customers, but to the end users, which is the team, which is yourself, which is anybody who I work with, for it to be easy and consumable? And I think that corporate experience of like really having to battle and fight in that environment. I was a fixer for many years. I worked with over 150 restaurants at one point, and it was just like, it was really fun to be able to take that knowledge, and although it's burritos and tacos, be able to shift it. And no, I was not doing that in all 100, plus restaurants all the time, but it was, it's really enlightening to be able to take some of those same principles, concepts, all that stuff, and apply it to this business model. And I think that at the heart of it, that's operations. It's taking that and making it your own.
Yeah. And I will say, I think as a solopreneur who's moved towards more of an agency model, and Adams helps us build this out in Coda specifically, and there's tons of other tools out there also, the resistance to, oh, I don't have my SOPs, and then that's standard operating procedures for those that don't speak in acronyms like us. It's scalability at the end of the day. And what I do and what Adam does is help companies scale at the end of the day. And every business has repeatable processes. So even if you think you don't have standard operating procedures, because it's just a fancy term for repeatable processes, you do. And the more that you're able to document it, and just because we're nerds and love technology, and I'll say it, we can automate those processes and streamline it across multiple team members internally or externally. That's when you really have a business and you're able to scale, because the days of me trying to do it all by myself are thankfully behind me. And I have awesome people like Adam and a bench of all-stars, wizards, and ninjas at RevUp Advisory. And the streamlining and the communication just becomes so much easier when you have these tools and systems to be able to do that. And so it is operations at the end of the day, but the goal is to be able to scale the business, and they have to come hand in hand. And the more I think you fight it, or the more friction you have with it, the more you're gonna not be able to scale, or I think you just halt and you kind of plateau. And in order to get to that next inflection point, you need this kind of stuff.
And I think to add to that, a lot of my content is like, don't go to automation first. And automation first is a great mentality to have. I think it's, people that might not understand the inner workings of it, or like what you're actually paying for, because like your operations costs and Zapier can add up pretty quick. If you're not paying attention to those things, you're just like, well, I just want it to be automated. Okay, cool. Right. So what am I automating?
Right. What is
it? where is it? And then my other enemy of the world is either Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. Granted, I still use it all the time, right? Like I jot quick ideas down, whatever it might be, but that is like the beginning point, and so even just as I'm having conversations with people, I'm like, well, where does the process live? One, if it's stuck in your head, like you got some work to do. Buy a whiteboard. I had it on camera a second ago. It was literally, like just dump the brain for a minute and then let's try to make some sense of it. And you'll easily be able to pick out like how mature something is, or how critical is this for my business, right? Even for me, like newsletter automation right now, I have processes built for that and ready to go, but am I necessarily putting my foot on the gas? No, it's just not important to me right now. And that's just like one small example. But even just for you, like with RevUp, it was, you wanted to scale and move. We needed to get the entire team into the business somehow. And it's kind of and maybe you felt this, it's like a control thing, because it's like, oh wait, all of a sudden everybody's going to see my hand. And that is scary. And so it's a lot more than just like optimization or operations or automation or all these power words people use. It really comes down to like, are you vulnerable enough to let people into your business and help you speed up? We can talk revenue acceleration all day. I know that with you, but can we also talk business and operations acceleration? Because that is the starting point of really where all that will come from, and it's the end result. So
yeah, and it's so important. And I'll just say, I love Excel and Google Sheets, but we do a lot of work in HubSpot and Salesforce. So we're always trying to claw people out of that and into an automated machine where the reports can be generated in real time. But I think what Adam helped me do is, I had a pretty great filing system in my Google Sheets with RevUp Advisory, the name of the client, tons of subfolders, and Adam's seen it all. But it still felt like it was getting like lost in the sauce at the end of the day. And so I've worked with Adam to create what I would call like a client control panel, that essentially like a blueprint at the end of the day that we can replicate client over client. That's like ticketing system, hour tracking, project management tool, deliverables, everything all in one, because those would eventually live in multiple Google subfolders of a client folder.
Copy of client, copy of.
Yeah, which sounds ridiculous. But I mean, even for these projects we're doing, even just building like a knowledge base, Adam, and we haven't talked about this for clients, by being able to go into Coda and saying, we delivered ICP workshop, we delivered customer journey mapping, we're doing cleanup here, and just surfacing that into a knowledge base at the end of the day and say, when we leave you at the end of the day, here's all the things we did. That was so easy. And I could keep that up so easily because it's easily accessible at the end of the day. And so it's communication and streamlining too.
Yeah. And lets you sleep at night and stop thinking about all the 6 things going on when you're at your kid's birthday party singing Taylor Swift. So
you know it. So you help, I'll just throw in a question here. So you help entrepreneurs, I would say solopreneurs, or folks like me that are building, I would call us like scale up agencies. You could have taken your business in like a million different directions based on your corporate experience, but like, why specifically helping these people create their operating systems? Why'd you go there?
I'll go back to just some of the things from like my Chipotle, but also going into a startup experience is I had leaders who kicked my butt. I would use other words on this, but we'll be safe. They beat me up, and in a good way. It was I was always the youngest person in the room that was, moving up and forward and sitting with people. I probably like anyone would be like, "What's going on?" But they purposely did it, and they'd tell me like 2 years later, and I'd be like, "What the heck are you doing?" Where it was helping me see the things that I couldn't see because they had lived it, they had experienced it. They whether it was with different brands, and we wanted to like think about how it connects to what we're currently doing today. And so my main mentor, who I call mom, she's polar opposite of me, and she inspired me really to leave the company. No, she inspired me to do what I'm doing today, where it's helping get in there with somebody. And I prefer the word integrator a lot more today than operations
I
specific.
like that. I haven't heard that from you yet.
I know, right? I told you there's stuff that's going on. Uh, but you are integrating everything that goes on. And I think as I came into the online scene, but also, and I also have a business that I work with locally here too. So I am, helping in that capacity. But when I came into this, like, I'm going to start my own business environment, I saw that there's all these different positions that said that they're operations. And to me, it bothered me. And
Oh my God. You look at the JDs on operations and you're like, that's sales, that's marketing, that's finance, that's a CEO. And like, I feel like operations becomes this like soup kitchen of just like,
it's whatever the CEO says it is. And it's okay. That is okay, because I read something, there's like 7 different types of COOs, for the CEO. And I think it makes people look at the position like, oh, I get to call myself that. Like, cool, I want you to, but do you understand the methodology of like what you're going into? There's many different ways to look at it. But then I found a lot of similarities to project management and that entire world. And that's pretty much where I'm at today and what I'm working and learning. But what got me into actually saying I want to continue to help entrepreneurs, people that are just starting their agencies, whatever it might be, was that they don't have the time for this. And I love being a number 2. And it took me.
Everyone needs a good number 2, and that's a real realization.
I fought it for a really long time, but in any business, whether you're a solopreneur or freelancer or whatever the heck you want to call yourself today, having a number 2, whether that's an accountability partner, whether that's somebody that can kick your butt on like getting things to market or whatever you're doing, because you can't be skilled at everything. You cannot wear all the hats.
No, I've learned that in 6 years.
And no matter how much you fight it, the question I always ask is like, at what cost? And so my beginning thing, even as I just network on LinkedIn, is try to know what's important to someone, because if it's costing them that, then we have to look at this differently. And that's also challenged me to look at pricing and things like that differently, because not everybody can afford a $5,000 to $7,000 a month contract. Not everybody can, but there is a way, if you just ask, or if you go to someone, I think even when we had this conversation, it was like, hey, is there a way where we could start working together differently? And we made it work. I think there needs to be more of that people, or of those people, and not in a way of like use and abuse each other. And it's just in a way of like, let me give you a snippet or a taste of my expertise. Let me help you a little bit. Let me just network with you. You never know what it will lead to. In my case, it's led to multiple contracts afterwards with other people. And I think that's what really got me addicted to this environment, is that there's so many moving pieces. Operations is defined as so many moving things. And I'm just really addicted to solving the problems and being that number 2. It's okay not to have the spotlight. So
love that. So that brings me to my next question. And I agree. And everyone needs a number 2. I think whether like an EA, a VA, an operator, an accountability partner, that probably looks different for every business. And I would say these milestones of your business. Like I'm in growth velocity now. I'm not at the end and exiting, and I'm not at the beginning where I really am thirst for knowledge. And so finding someone like you at this point was like just the right thing that I needed to go on this like acceleration at the end of the day. And I think one, maybe people don't even know someone like you exists at the end of the day. So that's why I'm bringing you on the LinkedIn Live. And two, I like to say, have your hair on fire at the end of the day. And you're just like, I'm going to lead to burnout at the end of the day because my hair is on fire. There has to be a better way to do business. And I think a lot of the philosophies of what you do and what I do are actually similar. We just look at it from like a different SOW kind of thing at the end of the day. So how do you know when it's right? I feel like that LinkedIn post like spoke to me and like was in my feed for a reason. And I knew it was right just based on what Lachey had said. But like, when is the right time to invest in these systems? Because some people may be scrappy and say, oh, I just want to do it all myself. And some people may be burnt out and overwhelmed and say, if I don't figure this out, like I'm done, I'm closing shop. So like, when's the right time to go there?
I think one, there's
There's never
there's never going to be a right time. But something that I would always do in my past was when I met or took over like a new restaurant or new locations or something like that, we would walk through simple fundamentals first together before we even started like gutting the place or doing any of those things. Because again, Fixer have some gnarly stories. But even if the place was a hot fire mess, we would step out and go get coffee and we'd really start breaking down what their day-to-day looked like. Just open conversation on what do you do at this time? What do you do at this time? And it might be annoying, but when you really step back and channel that reflective state for a hot minute, you start to understand, oh my God, I'm drowning here. And it's very easy just to look at a carousel and be like, oh yeah, I got to go do my schedule. No, work with people that have done it themselves, one, but also two, love doing it, because you're going to have somebody that's really picking your brain. I just did this with a recent client, and we figured out like there were a lot of moving pieces where it was just like, okay, we need to look at this differently now.
Right.
And that might have been
leaky pipes, I call them.
yeah. So I think it's when you hit that point of, okay, I'm growing and I'm a little worried in your gut about like what this looks like. Doesn't matter how much money you're bringing in. Does not. And I think that's the hardest piece, is separating that. But when you're able to look at it holistically and be like, how is this actually affecting my life or my loved one, whatever it might be, that's the right time. And it can be for anyone or any position. I would say the same thing to an internal team member. If you're a leader or doing something like that, if you've hit a point of like, oh God, like I'm working 15 hours a day, you need to speak up. And that's like the accountability version of me yelling right now, where it's like, speak up now, because you might need help, or you might need a different way to look at it, or you might need to bring in someone like myself or you to do the things that can help speed things up, right? Whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, it's all about the people that are operating the business. And if that sucks, everything sucks. Your customers are left to pick up the pieces. That's how I put it.
Yeah. And I think it brings me back to, I'll never forget this speech that Kevin Dorsey did at a pavilion summit I went to in New York, where he was like, what's your why? Adam's why and my why may be like different of why we're doing this business and why we're in this world that we're in. And so I feel like it's like when you figure out what makes someone tick and why they're doing it at the end of the day, you can help solve problems in a certain way for them, because it all leads back to like, why are they doing this? What's the vision? And it all comes back to that. And I think we look at that from the same angle and then apply different professional services at the end of the day.
Yep. 100% agree. I think I keep going back to Chipotle on this, but like your restaurant wanted to be the restaurant that when you're going out to eat, you were going to your restaurant. Right. Because of how you were treated or what was going on there, or the people, whatever it might be. They know me by name. They put a little extra cheese on whatever the crazy things people come up with are. My dad has his things. So I hear it all the time. But it's the same way that we look at our businesses today. Is it's like, are people choosing us because they want to choose our business, or are they choosing us because they have to? The sooner you can shift to because they want to, that's when things get really fun. And in the beginning, I was chasing so much that I kind of lost sight of that for a minute, where you'll know when you start getting impacted by what's going on in your business and what's happening behind the scenes, because your customers will ask, are you okay? Or you look tired, or, there's always signals. Like, people talk about selling signals. I talk about fatigue signals and burnout signals, because that means something's wrong. And it's affecting all those other things that we're so worried about.
Yeah. And I would say the pivotal moment for me was like willing to relinquish control, still having control, but being at the top and letting other people, I'll say, like, swim in their lanes. And so hiring a business coach, hiring Adam as an operator, working with like a therapist, they all sort of like intertwine at the end of the day. And being able to like say, okay, we're going to have helpers and that are in their own disciplines, that are experts in the area that I've vibed with and I've sought out, and I think they're a good fit for our agency, come in and help us. I feel like that's where the growth happens. And people, I would say, overlook that because it may sound fluffy, or always say like the words like not sexy at the end of the day. But that's like the true inflection points, tools, services, and people that I think change the velocity of the growth of business at the end of the day.
Yeah, to anyone that loves success themselves and feeling it for themselves, they have not made somebody else more successful than them yet. And I think those are the life-changing moments that like keep you doing what you do. One of my leaders for a long time, she was living in the ghetto, and her son, first time I met her son was walking home from school and there were gunshots going off in the neighborhood. I went on a personal mission to make sure that girl, her life changed, only because out of the goodness of like, hey, she's a good person. But then the feeling like, oh my God, I cried a lot. I still cry a lot. Um, when you see those people succeed, because it's like, I did that. And it was the decisions I made that did that. And I know that might sound like very high up in the air, but if you look inside for a minute and be like, how could I channel more of that in my business? Those are the things that like help you get up at the alarm. Those are the things that help you think positively about the direction your business is going. Or like when you're sitting down having your strategy conversations, you come up with cooler ideas because you're more internally motivated to do that. And so I'm in this anti-solopreneur stage of my life because you don't and you cannot do it yourself. And I think we've lost a lot of that in the recent few years. While everybody was, working from home, I was out in the field for 17 hours some days, and it sucked. And so I think there's going to be a big shift as we get back to that more with like, no, there's an interconnectedness between what we do. It'll look different, but we should be the champions of seeing other people succeed.
Yeah. And I always say when our clients and customers win, we win. And so the idea of helping them streamline their sales and their marketing efforts to essentially grow the revenue at the end of the day is when I feel so much like pride and admiration for being like the team of wizards and ninjas that helped. And I feel like you share those sentiments, and that's why we get along so well. But let's talk practicality. I've talked about Coda. Code.io, you've helped me build my backend operating system on them. I've used Basecamp, Jira, Notion, Google Sheets, ClickUp, Asana. I've literally used like everything. And so when I came to Adam, I was like, I don't want 10 tools. I want project management. I want time tracking. I want ticketing in one place. And I was like, and I love Coda because I had adopted it for my business anyway. And Adam's a Coda expert. And so that was our path and like what we chose together. But talk to me, give me some like practical so other listeners can understand of like what you're actually building for people. It's repeatable processes and it's operations, but like, what does that actually mean at the end of the day?
First, I'm tool agnostic and I love Coda. for a long time, spent a lot of time working there, but I think it's for what use case you're trying to attack. And that's something that comes with like your strategy and your planning as you're moving forward. I think there's a lot of like conversation around don't switch tools. It's like, well, no, switch tools if it makes sense for your business. I think even when you got me on Read AI, like I switched I'm like, I want an AI coach that's evaluating how many times I drop an F-bomb on a call. I'm better now. Thank you, Reed. But whatever it might be, you have to be open to it and open to the change. So it starts there. But what I do in the background is I try to understand the current state of like everything that's going on in the business. If that is Google Drive, that is Google Drive. I love it. It's a puzzle. Let's figure out kind of what moves where, what happens when. In a team environment, you have to know what everybody's experience is like, not just the founders and what their perspective is. It's, you know, how is the team interacting with these things? Because you're going to find people that, one, will buy in, and two, that are probably going to give you some gas, and that's okay. But when we start to map that out, we really start to look at like, where do we get to speed up? In a lot of cases today, for me, I'm more so focused on like the back end engineering side. And so that's Airtable, and that's going into tools like Zeno and things like that that are going to connect differently. But if it's for an agency that's moving at the pace that they're moving right now, that they don't need to take on like a whole back end development tool, then it's a tool like Coda or Notion, whatever it might be. And so really just evaluating like what is the current state, but you have to build a foundation that you can easily move it after that. And I think that's the most important thing, because if you're envisioning that you're going to have, you know, a $10 million a year business, whatever it might be, or build my product, have a certain amount of users, and you're building something that's just living in Loom, like, no, it won't work. Like,
I don't know. That doesn't help.
It might work today. And I think that is where I get a lot of that's where I get into the most scuffles, you know, as I'm going back and forth when I'm trying to get information, is like, what can we do for our foundation that's going to put us strategically positioned 5 years from now from an internal operating standpoint? So Airtable is kind of where I'm living today. I love using different SOP tools. Like Loom just dropped their like amazing AI tool. I looked at that and I'm like, thank you. Like immediately I'm like tagging, like that was awesome. I actually just got my partner on using it for school stuff, and because he's calling people for classes, and I'm like, well, no, like try this out. Here, I'll add you on my account. And it's more fun that way. I think looking at that current state though, you have to look at the whole stack, audit where your money is going, what it looks like. The scariest thing to me is, and my example is always Stripe. And I kind of take this because Anthony Pieri, someone who I look up to, would always talk about it with product marketing. But I look at it from an operations standpoint, and I'm like, wait, Stripe has all of these resources within it. I can pull webhooks automatically. I can create the automations natively in Stripe without even spending a nickel in Zapier or whatever it might be. And I think that's, for anybody looking at their tool stack today, like really start to understand the tool to the full use and what can you do with it. Ask questions, reach out to their support team. I use Breakhold for my CRM tool. I'm not huge and need HubSpot today, but like Arnaud and I, we go back and forth, and I'm like asking him questions on, hey, could I do this? Oh no, okay, maybe I could actually like show you how I do it. And it's a win-win. But looking that way, I think the future plans is seeing kind of where this whole back-end development thing goes, and acquiring different people that are really good at different things and sticking to operations and making it fun.
Yeah. And I would say Adam threw down so many bombs of like awesome companies that I would say we know and love, because we're in these chat rooms, we talk to each other, and we talk to a lot of other tech friends. I would say, even if you've never heard of some of these companies, it's basically like, I need an AI tool that records video. Okay, well now Loom offers it. Or I need a project management tool that kind of looks like that but has maybe statuses and due dates. That's something like a Notion. So I feel like you don't need to know what the names of the tools are for people that are, I think, solopreneurs and entrepreneurs. Sometimes we live in such a tech SaaS world that we're like, oh, check out that new tool. You don't know about it? Okay. But some people may not even be able to give names to the companies behind the tools, but they may be able to just describe what they want to have done. And so then you hire people like Adam and I to be like, it's our job to take your, what we'll say, like technical requirements and come up with a plan and an integration and a tool that can do that. And whether it's one tool or 5 tools, it's a different story. But it's just to be able to describe that, then you can scale an operating system at the end of the day.
Yep. It's the same. I'm renovating a house right now, and I look at like our home tools the same way, where like I didn't need a certain saw until I got to this one point of building a railing and I needed something. And so there's always going to be a time and a place. It's just being able to monitoring it, putting a system in place to monitor it, whether that's monthly, quarterly, and this could be RevOps propaganda, but like there should be somebody that, whether it's you or somebody on your team or somebody that you hire in, that's really assessing it, not just looking at the stack, but also, are we using it? How is our team using it? Are we doing all the things inside of it? Is there, a revenue win, even if it's incremental, with like keeping this over that? Or maybe, an example is expense tools. Like you can easily build out an expense tool or work with somebody that can, cough, cough, because there's a lot of companies that are just trying to get you into their banking system.
And so like, so hard to unwind, as we know.
Yep. Especially when you start, I know the contract life of having very outdated software that you're just stuck with as everybody is moving swiftly. Yearly contracts always, but like it was like 5 years of like US software. And I'm like, what are we doing? Who signed this?
Yeah, because the person that signed it, to be frank, is probably not the person that understands how the operating systems are all intertwined like piping. And so they signed it because it was, I'll say, a solution or a quick solution that then it gets it off their plate at the end of the day. But what we look at is like the upstream and downstream effects of how this affects the operating system of the whole business, which is honestly a new wave and a different way of thinking. But I think this is where companies are going at the end of the day. But there's still education and awareness as to what does this even mean for me at the end of the day.
I'll add one more variable into that. With the people on your team, how does it affect them? And I think that shift is happening right now because companies are bleeding dry in a lot of different worlds. I'm not just speaking at one industry. I come from a service industry and it was very difficult, but turnover is a real problem. And if you just took a minute to understand how they feel, not just ask them, but like really understand, you'll find your answers to what tools or what could be solved differently. Going back to POS software, I'm pretty sure somebody didn't have a conversation with like 10 cashiers. I wish they would have.
And then on that 5-year deal with your point of sale,
slow down your throughput. It would cause customer issues. You're refunding stuff left. So like those same principles apply to any business where it's just like, it's a people-centric upstream, downstream auditing, behavior that like you just have to believe in as a leader.
Yeah, we're going through an exercise with a client where we're doing an audit on HubSpot and Salesforce. And so it's kind of marrying the two systems that need to be integrated better. I'll say we need to optimize the integration, but there's about 500 to 700 fields on both sides, and we can probably cut that by more than half. And so we're giving homework to the client now and saying, hey, do you need 300 fields on your company page in HubSpot? Because my guess is you don't use 300 fields. And so how can we eliminate that and simplify the UI UX at the end of the day to make the marketer's job more easily or make the salesperson's job more easy is huge. And so although it ends up being a big undertaking and it's a lot of hands on deck, the effects of where it goes and how it can streamline is so important. And so we see that every day, but I think it's something people need to understand too.
And the no code movement or low code or whatever, I can have ChatGPT help me with code if I need to.
Right.
That
But
movement,
you're smart enough to be able to check it, which I think is where people get trapped.
that movement is going to change a lot of things for, say, even a situation like that. And somebody taught me this, but and recently too, when we were kind of connecting it to the front end, but it was, are all of your fields just readily available 24/7, or are you creating a view for every department? So it's like, even in Airtable today, I was just having this conversation with a client very well, where I'm like, no. I will create a view that has the editable fields for us, because then one, it won't break, but two, then it's easy to understand. I think people get lost in Excel. Excel is like one of those things where I remember inventory management tools that would come in and I would break it. I would just, mess up a formula somewhere and I'm like, crap. And then it's ruined forever.
Yeah.
And you can create those environments in a no code space. So
we were just having that same conversation on Salesforce. Like, the executives has a really 10,000 foot in there high level snapshot, but the sellers who are going to get in the weeds on the opportunities and moving pipeline really need like a more full view. And so we're having that conversation yesterday. But this is awesome. We could nerd out on this forever. I want to say, where can people find you? How can people get in touch with you? And if there's any other thing you want to plug, now's your moment, Adam.
Definitely. I am on LinkedIn, very active. You can find me at linkedin.com/AdamJude. My name's in there. I also have a couple links in there that you can hit if you guys want to stay tuned. I have a new newsletter revamping as I shifted tools, but I really like what Beehive's doing. And you can schedule a call with me just to touch base, whether it's to work together or if you have something that you're looking to solve. I'm open to those types of conversations, but I definitely love hearing the problems. And if you guys have some of them or things, I'm sure 10 other people have it. And so we can have a conversation about how we can help each other. So
awesome. So follow him on LinkedIn. We got one comment from Chris that said chicken burritos for the win. So I just had to share that. I hope you guys learned something today. There are so many tools and tricks that can solve the pain of scaling your business, whether it's for yourself or for a larger team. And there's people that can help you do this. And so you're not alone. So I just wanted to bring this conversation to the forefront. And I thank you, Adam, for joining. And we are getting on each other's calendars to have a catch up very soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.